guys, today we're going to be doing a 20-minute flow to prepare for our splits. So for a lot of people, splits is something that maybe they have always wanted to try, always wanted to do, but just haven't been able to do. So today we'll be doing some stretches that will start to open up in the hamstrings and the hips to prepare the body for the splits. And just remember not to expect yourself to be able to do the splits after the 20 minutes. Just have to keep practicing and try not to force your body or push yourself down into the stretches. As always, just keep breathing into the poses, and with practice and time, eventually you'll get it. So we'll need 2 blocks today to help support our practice. If you don't have blocks at home, you can use books or anything else, just nice and firm to help support our weight. Let's begin.
Let's take a moment in child's pose first, to settle in and catch our breath. Melting the sit bones down towards the heels, forehead down to the mat. 5 long, deep breaths here, filling into the belly, into the back ribs. Maybe taking a few twists, a few shakes, getting any last bits of tension out of the body first. Maybe rocking the hips side to side, shaking out the waist. Before setting up into our tabletop to a neutral spine. So stacking the wrists directly underneath the shoulders and knees directly underneath the hips, spreading the fingers nice and wide. Inhale, let's lift that right leg up off the mat. Flexing that back foot, noticing if the toes are pointing out towards the side, keeping them pointing down towards the mat. Drawing those ribs in, flat back, pushing the mat away with the hands. Maybe reaching out with the opposite arm, extending the fingertips and back heel out in opposite directions. And maybe even bending through that back leg and reaching back with the left arm, grabbing a hold of that foot. So immediately we're starting to stretch out into the hips, to that hip flexor, the quads, the knee, the shoulders and chest. Slowly reverse the path, extend back out before releasing on the exhale. Maybe shaking it out again, wagging that tail left and right. Next inhale, this time left foot up nice and high. Again flexing the foot and making sure those toes don't point out towards the sides. Pointing straight down, keeping the hips square. Maybe staying right here is enough. Engaging through that core. Maybe reaching out with that right hand this time. Fingertips and heel pointing out in opposite directions. Maybe reaching back, grabbing a hold of the top of that foot, and starting to kick the back foot into the hand, opening up through the left hip flexor this time. Remember, this is just an option, so it's quite an intense quad and hip flexor stretch and a little bit of a back bend, so don't feel you have to do these options. Slowly releasing back down onto all fours and shake it out. Walking the hands a little further forward, tuck the toes under and exhale into downward facing dog. Keeping the feet around hip width apart. So we're really focusing on keeping the hips square in all of our movements today, so that when we come into our final splits, we already have that practice in keeping the hips square, and we won't be tempted to sit to one side or open the hips out. Take a few moments to start to open up through the backs of the legs, especially the hamstrings and calves. Lifting up through that right leg, and again noticing if the hips are opening out, keeping them square, and then exhale. Step it through between the hands. Firstly, coming into a low lunge, so lowering to the back knee, maybe wriggling the front foot a little further forward. Maybe grabbing our blocks and putting it on the each side, left and right sides of our leg, just so we can keep our chest and shoulders back and open. Maybe even coming onto the palms of the hands. Maybe you don't need the blocks at all, you can bring the fingertips or palms straight down into the mat. But again, noticing if the spine can keep its length. Noticing if the back has started to round out and hunched out. Try to keep the crown drawing up towards the sky. And exhale, sinking a little lower down into that lunge. opening up through the left hip flexor. Really taking a few big, long, deep breaths here to sink into the pose. Allow the hips to slowly start to open out. On the next inhale, we're bending out, straightening out through that right leg and flexing the feet, drawing the toes back towards the face. Maybe walking the blocks a little further back towards the body. Option to keep that knee bent if the backs of the knees are feeling any pain at all. Maybe with the next exhale, we can start to fold forward, chest leads forward. Maybe the belly and thighs can connect. Again, the aim here isn't to get that knee down to the nose, but to keep the chest open and the shoulders down away from the ears. Maybe walking the blocks or the fingertips a little further forward. Let's come back into a half lunge. And on the next exhale, this time we're coming straight back into our half splits. Inhale to half lunge. Exhale back to half splits. Doing a little bit of a flow here, moving through the poses. Transitioning, feeling into every movement. Move with your own breath. Taking a few more rounds here. With every exhale, maybe we can fold a little further forward over that leg. Sending sit bones back towards the back heel. Bring the blocks away from the mat and slowly step the right foot back into downward facing dog. Shake the legs out. Shaking out through the hamstrings and the calves. Keeping the chest drawing down towards the thighs. Spine nice and long. Next inhale, lifting up through the left leg. And again, noticing if that hip has opened out. Let's keep the hips square, even if it means you can't lift that leg up as high. Exhale, slowly step it through between the hands. Maybe wriggling the front foot forward, making sure the heel is directly underneath the knee. And again, bringing the blocks to either side of the foot. Maybe coming onto the fingertips, if that helps to keep the spine straight. If you don't need the blocks, then just bring the fingertips straight down onto the mat. Sinking the hips down into our lunge onto the right hip flexor this time. With every exhale, maybe sinking a little bit lower. Keeping the crown of the head drawing up. Keep the belly engaged so we're not dumping the weight into the lower back. Draw the ribs back towards the spine. Next inhale, we're lengthening out through that front leg. Draw the toes back, and this time exhale, folding forward. So noticing if that left hip is coming forward, let's keep that left hip drawing back so the hips are nice and square. And again, an option to bend through that front knee if you feel any pain. Otherwise, chest leads forward and slowly starting to melt down. Using the breath with every exhale, maybe melting a little further forward, folding forward over that front leg. Maybe tuck the back toes under if the knee feels uncomfortable. Coming into a little flowing sequence. So inhale, bending the knee. Exhale, extending back out, sitting the hips back. Inhale, half lunge. Exhale, half splits. Inhale. Keeping the chest and shoulders back and down the whole time. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Maybe folding a little further forward with every exhale. And slowly coming back into a half crescent lunge, moving the blocks aside and stepping the left foot back to downward facing dog. Again, shaking the hips out. Maybe noticing that the right and left sides are evening out, a little more balanced out now. Keep the head heavy so there's no tension in the neck. Next inhale, we're raising up through the right leg again, hips square. Then exhale, gently step it through between the hands. Just around halfway between the mat, so we're not stepping too wide. Grabbing the blocks. Maybe coming onto the horizontal edges or just to the short edges of the block, just adjusting the height to what you need. Making sure the front heel and back heel are straight line, hips square towards the front like train tracks, tracking forwards. Bring the fingertips onto the blocks. And again, keeping the chest up and spine long, start to fold forward over the right leg. Notice if some of that weight has come off the back heel. So see if you can ground the outside edge of that back foot down into the mat. So the weight is evenly in both legs. And with every exhale, maybe folding a little further forward, maybe keeping a slight micro bend in that front knee. And from here, going to come into a pigeon pose, so grounding the palms back down into the mat, gently lowering the right knee behind that right wrist, stepping the left foot back, just to widen the stance, and avoiding sinking over towards that right hip. See if you can keep those hips square, even if you need to put a block underneath the right sit bone to help with the balance. Maybe staying right here on the palms, slowly lowering down onto the forearms. Maybe even using a block and bringing it under the forearms if you're about halfway. No matter which depth you come to for this pose, which level, just remember to keep the shoulders relaxed. And remember to breathe into the pose, really feel into it. Opening up through the glutes, the buttocks, the lower back, still opening up into the hip flexors. Really powerful stretch into the hips that we often underestimate. Tuck the back toes under and slowly push yourself back up into downward facing dog, shaking the hips out again, walking the feet out. On the next inhale, left leg up towards the sky, and exhale, step it through between the hands, around halfway up the mat. Again, we don't want to make our stance too wide, but if it's too narrow, it can also be a little bit hard to balance. Just finding the length, the width that feels best for you. Bring the fingertips onto the block. If you're flexible enough, feel free to not use the block and just move it out to the side. Otherwise, chest leads forward, keeping the crown of the head drawing forwards and the tailbone drawing out towards the opposite direction, so the spine can grow nice and long. And exhale, fold forward, maybe keeping a micro bend in the knees to protect it. Ground the hands back down into the mat and coming down to a pigeon pose on the other side. So the left knee lowering down towards the wrist and stepping the right foot back. Again, noticing if you're sinking out to one side. Maybe using the fingertips on the mat to prop ourselves back up. Opening up through the chest on the inhale before exhaling, folding forward. Again, maybe coming onto the blocks, forearms, or even bringing block underneath the forehead so we can rest the head down like a pillow. Feeling the other side of the glutes, the buttocks, the hips, hip flexors, opening up. I like to keep my back foot flexed sometimes to protect the knee, the back knee. You can always roll up the mat as well to give your knee a bit of extra padding. Slowly walk the hands back towards the body and step the left foot back. And again, shaking the hips out, walking it out. Noticing how the hips feel in comparison to the beginning of the class. Raising up through the right leg and exhale, step it through. And this time, we're going to come into a lizard pose. Keeping the back leg straight if you can. If it's too strong, then come down onto the back knee. So the hands are on the inside edge of the sole of that right foot, and we've wriggled the right foot out to the wide edges of the mat. Maybe coming onto the fingertips if the stretch is too strong and too deep. Maybe even bringing one of the blocks and bringing the hands, the fingertips to rest on the block. Maybe bringing the forearms down onto the block, or forearms can come straight down into the mat. So all of these are options And remember to always choose your own option. Try not to do what everyone else is doing or whatever I'm demonstrating in the video. Just experiment and see which works better for you. Sinking down into the hips with every exhale. And on the next exhale, we're going to drop down onto the outside edge of the right foot and letting the weight of that knee drop out towards the side. Feeling a stretch in the other part of hamstrings, the buttocks, the glutes. Maybe even using the right hand to gently push the knee away to deepen the stretch. So from here now, if you've got that back knee lowered down, just lift it off the mat, coming into a high lunge. And again, just remember to adjust the blocks to whatever height suits you. On the exhale, extending through that front leg. Inhale, sinking back into a high lunge. Exhale, folding forward, chest leads forward. Inhale, high lunge, sinking the hips down. Exhale, folding forward, reaching the chest forward. Inhale, sinking down. Exhale, fold forward. Inhale, sinking back down into the high lunge. Last one. Exhale. Inhale. And gently lower down to the back knee. On the next exhale, we're coming back into a half split. Maybe just choosing to stay right here today, working on the half split. Maybe you get a nice deep stretch in the hamstring already. Otherwise, we're slowly starting to work towards our full split. So we're gently just stepping the feet back, just 1 inch at a time, and bringing the blocks to around the hips or just forward of the hips so we can hold on to the block and use it to support our weight. So keep pressing the weight down into the blocks to lift the hips up, and then exhale, see if you can sink the hips a little further down. And at the same time, see if you can walk the feet a little further away from each other. Might take a few goes, just take your time. Really move with your breath, just inching the feet slowly away from each other and sinking the hips down. Maybe you find that you can't go all the way down today. As always, push the blocks away and then exhale, sinking a little further down. Always using the weight of the hips to slowly sink down again. And once you've had enough, slowly just step the feet back. Maybe coming into a child's pose or just bringing the knees together and having a little rest here, shaking out through the wrists. So we do put quite a lot of weight into the wrists when we push down into the blocks. If you do find any pain at all, you can always just come onto the fingertips or onto the fists, or even just remove the blocks if you don't need them. Coming back into downward facing dog and repeating on the other side. So next inhale, let's raise up through the left leg. Three-legged dog, last one, hips square. Then exhale, gently step it through between the hands. Coming into our lizard pose. So both hands on the inside edges of the foot, wriggling the left foot to the outside edges of the mat. Option to keep the back foot straight, or option to lower the back knee down. If you keep the back leg straight, get a nice stretch and strengthening into the hip flexor as well. But it can be quite strong, so just see what works best. And as always, lower down to whichever level, maybe forearms on the block, maybe palms on the block, or maybe forearms straight down onto the mat. And sink the hips down with every exhale. Keeping that knee hugged into the shoulder for now. Exhale, sinking a little lower. Keep the head relaxed. Maybe coming back up onto the palms, and this time dropping the knee away from the body, coming onto the outside edge of the left foot, and maybe using that left hand on the inside edge of the thigh or the knee to gently push it away from the body, deepening the stretch. If this is too strong, just keep both hands down onto the mat. We're coming into our full crescent lunge now, so bringing the blocks back on either side of the foot, lifting the back knee off. Inhale here, Then exhale, extending through that front leg, folding forward. Inhale, crescent lunge. Exhale, folding forward. 3 more. Inhale, crescent lunge. Exhale, fold forward. Move with your breath. Inhale. Exhale. Taking your time here. Sending, drawing the left hip back. Inhale. Last one. Exhale. And slowly inhale, coming back into crescent lunge, then lowering down through the back knee. Walking the blocks back. An option again to come into half splits and stay there. Otherwise, slowly starting to shimmy the feet out in opposite directions. And really taking your time. Maybe you'll find that one side is more flexible than the other. So you'll notice here that left side is definitely my favorite side. And you'll find that you will have a favorite side as well. But remember, the key is to always work on both sides and never just the favorite. Always want to try to balance out both sides. Once you've had enough, you've had a bit of a play, just come back to a child's pose. Close like a child's pose, the knees together. Really breathing in, letting the shoulders fall forward. Releasing back through the hips and the hamstrings. They've done a lot of hard work today. Just ascending your breath there. Giving yourself a pat on the back. Congratulating yourself for taking in all this hard work. Putting in all this effort. Bring the thumbs back to the third eye. Take one last deep breath here. And exhale, sighing all that tension out. Namaste.